Hello, School Transportation Nation. Tony Corpin here with School Transportation News. We're glad you made it to the podcast. It's brought to you by TransFinder, the leader in school bus routing. We also have a great green tip from our friends at First Student. Also, Mr. Ryan Gray is joining me on the podcast. Ryan, welcome, sir.
Hello, everybody. Welcome back to the nation. Good to be here as always.
Yeah, we're glad to have you, Ryan. A little later, I'll be talking with Kayne Smith, Director of Transportation at Cypress-Fairbanks ISD down in the Houston area of Texas, and our current reigning Transportation Director of the Year. We're about to hand the baton off, though, in the November issue. So, guys, keep an eye out if you're curious who's going to be the next Transportation Director of the Year. That is coming soon, a few weeks away. So hold your breath. Keep an eye on our website. Before we get to that, I want to give you guys a green tip from First Student, the leader in student transportation. If you guys are one of the winners of the EPA's Clean School Bus Lottery, where are you going to start? Where are you going to go? Well, you know if you have the right bus, battery, for your geography, terrain? Do you know how to design your infrastructure? Have you talked to your utility? First Student leads the way with school bus electrification with over 150 EVs deployed and more than 300 ordered. They have launched EV consulting services to help school districts like you with assessments, partnering with utilities, total cost of ownership, and project management. You learn more by emailing them at electrification@firststudentinc.com. That's electrification@firststudentinc.com. All right, Ryan, let's jump into the headlines of the week. We got School Bus Safety Week, full swing, man. Lots of things happening out there. Awareness, driver safety, top of mind for lots of school districts.
Yes, we are actively obtaining celebrations, photos, descriptions of programs that are being run this week, National School Bus Safety Week. So, of course, anything that brings to forefront the minds of the general public, school bus safety and the work that drivers are doing, and to get kids to and from classes safely and on time and efficiently. It's always great for the industry. So definitely email us. You can go on our social media channels and post what you're doing. Email Taylor Hannon Ekbatani, our illustrious associate editor at taylor@stnonline.com. And we'll definitely get as much information up online as we can about School Bus Safety Week.
Excellent. Ryan, we also got some V to X pilot projects happening in Atlanta. Some data came out on some exciting information. Want to enlighten our audience?
Absolutely. So some of you were at STN Expo Reno in July, and those of you who were on that last day in the closing general session saw Peter Ashley, who's the VP of Business Development for Applied Information, and they're an artificial intelligence company out of Alpharetta, Georgia, so in that Fulton County area near Atlanta. And they're responsible for a lot of school zone safety signage, everything from the speed signage monitors, safe crossing, a lot of the technology that we now see as we're driving by schools. Well, they do so much more than that. And they're really involved in what you refer to as CV to X or cellular vehicle to everything. And vehicle to everything encompasses basically, like it says, everything. It's part of that smart cities concept that for a good decade there have been some of these test cities that have been both international and in the US that look at what's the future going to look like in terms of our society and transportation and infrastructure. And so, it's really interesting what the folks at Applied Information are doing. They made news that we reported on earlier this year, working with Audi, where they are undertaking a project where they're providing on the dashboards of certain Audi vehicles an icon or a warning that comes up about an impending school bus stop, looking at the illegal passing issue, trying to really, shine a light on that. Well, they also have a larger program that they are working on that encompasses, yes, some of that Audi technology, but like I said, it goes way beyond that. They're working with Fulton County School System outside of Atlanta. They signed on earlier this year, as we also reported, with Bluebird and Navistar on that Audi project. Well, beyond that, this connected vehicle student safety pilot program, which was run in April, and then they analyzed all this data that came back in May, and they just reported on it last week, or they released the findings. And really what it was looking at was prioritized green lights for school buses. Some of you might know what that is, have seen it in action maybe, or have actually worked with it. It's more commonly found with transit buses. I know that there is a project in the San Fernando Valley out here in LA that has this. Also with trains, and also with emergency first responders, where there is technology on these vehicles or on this equipment that basically talks with the red lights, and it sends a call or a request to change the light to green or to extend the green light so that these vehicles can keep moving. This is part of this CV2X concept that they really wanted to prove out. So they've been working on this with Fulton County schools, as I said, and some really interesting feedback and results that came from it. You can check out the article at stnonline.com. I posted it last week. But overall, 2 school buses, one a 2019 propane-powered Bluebird Vision and a 2012 model diesel-powered IC Bus CE series, they combined accounted for improvements of 13.3% less travel time for the routes that they were operating, an 18% increase in speed of route completion, and a 40.4% reduction in the number of stops, as well as a 10.4% less fuel consumption and emissions. It's really fascinating, and just what happened on these 2 routes. And Trey Stowe, who's the director of transportation operations for Fulton County Schools, basically told me the same thing. He was expecting this increase in time efficiency and fuel mileage, but he wasn't, expecting everything that's coming out of this, and that, it's the whole kind of nuts to bolts about efficiency, which we need now more than ever. I mean, so much that we see, Tony, at the trade shows and that we write about in terms of technology is looking at that efficiency. So, it's just going to show what's possible. And the applied information folks have told me that this is just scratching the surface. I mean, there's so much more that CV2X encompasses. So, it definitely we're at the ground floor, but some exciting technology to look forward to.
Yeah, Ryan, I think one of the things when I bring up the concept of lights turning green, in fact, I talked to a group of routers and they were like, oh my God, that's amazing. That's incredible. But then the director of transportation was kind of rolling that back for a second and saying, yeah, that's difficult to do because you got to work with the municipalities. I'm driving through multiple cities. It sounds really cool, but all the bureaucracy to actually get that done, it feels, I think, very daunting to school districts. Like, who's going to carry that ball? Who's going to do that? And maybe Applied Information, they have that in Atlanta, but how does this spread to a larger opportunity? Because obviously the results extremely compelling, right? Saving money, saving time, happier riders. I mean, all around, this sounds like just a win-win. It's just, how do we move the ball forward to make this a reality for others, right?
Exactly.
And Trey Stowe obviously is probably elated, and so is his school board. Like, hey, how fast can we light this up? How can we do it with all our fleet? So that'll be interesting, kind of moving into that next step or that next phase where they go to a larger scale to see the real benefits. Because when you start to see it, if you really extrapolate those numbers, wow, it ends up probably being a lot of money, 10% plus savings on your fuel. I don't know how many buses they're running, but that's got to be, it could be hundreds of thousands of dollars in savings.
Absolutely. And there's some intangibles here too. So certainly, Applied Information has experience working with a number of manufacturers. I would expect to see more school bus manufacturers, frankly, sign on to working with them. Bluebird and IC already are, but they are working with, the big three manufacturers. They're working with heavy duty trucking companies, so this is a small company in terms of, they're in Alpharetta, Georgia, and they got an outstanding facility. I've toured it virtually during the pandemic. Brian Mulligan, the president, and Bill Wells, their director of communications and marketing, they got me on the Zoom call and just took me around the office. So it was really outstanding. I hope to see it in person. And that's where really got the conversation started about the possibilities. And lo and behold, I actually kind of, helped put them in touch with Trey at Fulton County Schools, and the rest is kind of history. But I was mentioning, the intangibles, yes, so much of the, potential cost savings, but another benefit that came out of this was the school bus drivers were reporting on these two routes that student behavior turned on its ear. I mean, it improved vastly, because you think about it, if you're, saving 13, 14, 15% of the time it used to spend to get the kids to school, and you're getting there faster, you're going to see a result with how the kids are behaving. And the drivers found that they were able to, over that month, leave the depot a little bit later each day and still get to school with plenty of time to spare, go and do all of their stops, and still, be able to get there before the bell, have the kids get off, and get to class safely and on time. So you were mentioning Fulton County School Systems probably has quite a few buses. Well, they have 930. So do some math there with some of those figures, and you could see right away why Trey is so elated about this. And certainly, his administration is, I am sure. Now, this is not inexpensive technology. It's about $5,000 per bus for an aftermarket retrofit. But certainly, as with most things, hopefully we see prices coming down in terms of economies of scale. So certainly right now, when you're looking at one-off pilot programs, it's pretty expensive. But if you're spending $5,000 per bus, certainly times 930, that's a lot. But if you're saving 3, 4, 5, 10 times that amount, it might be worth it. So pretty interesting stuff.
Yeah, cool technology, Ryan. Also, some other headlines coming out. We see NAPT got a new executive director.
Absolutely. Molly McGee Hewitt, PhD, is joining NAPT as the executive director and CEO starting November 15th. So Steve Calms, the president of NAPT Foundation, along with Rick Grisham, who's the NAPT president, announced this last week. Some folks might find Molly's name familiar. That's because up until 2020, she was the CEO and executive director of CASBO, the California Association of School Business Officials. So that is a sister organization, or a big sister organization maybe, to CASTO, the California Association of School Transportation Officials. She retired in 2020. She moved to Missouri, I understand, from some sources out there in the school transportation nation. And she is now coming back into the game, and she's joining NAPT. Interestingly, at CASBO, she was really instrumental in developing the Pupil Transportation Leadership Academy there, that's run by our good friends Tim Purvis and Mike Ray of the consultancy Pupil Transportation Info. A lot of folks know Tim from our STN Expo Reno. She worked really closely with the Transportation Professional Council of CASBO to get that education program going. And this is going back several years. So she definitely has pupil transportation experience. I mentioned she's a PhD. She's got educational background in organizational development, a master's degree in school business leadership, and that PhD in adult education and training. And she was really instrumental in growing the membership of CASBO. So I know that is definitely something that I'm sure NAPT is targeting with this hire. So looking forward to meeting her and getting to know more about her.
Excellent. And last week, we also saw a letter written from NSTA calling on DOT to address the chassis shortage specifically. You have more details on that, Ryan?
Yeah. So the National School Transportation Association wrote a letter last week to Pete Buttigieg, the Secretary of the Department of Transportation at the federal level, and they're really looking for him to help alleviate the shortage of vehicle chassis that are currently limiting school bus manufacturing in the U.S. Basically, NSTA cites that original equipment manufacturers are saying that, this bottleneck right now that the industry and that, vehicle manufacturing is seeing right now, and especially the small bus parts supply chain, could potentially take the industry 5 to 7 years to fully recover from. So, again, looking specifically at some of these Type A school buses that are being affected by this, NSTA is asking Mayor Pete, as he's known, the former mayor of South Bend, Indiana, before he ran for the presidency of the U.S. Several years ago. They believe that chassis manufacturers need to set aside units for school transportation purposes. So they're looking to expand the current Department of Transportation port and infrastructure and supply chain resiliency programs and developing economic incentives for small bus chassis productive and streamlining current procurement regulations that can potentially clear that supply chain bottleneck. So, certainly looking for a multi-year recovery here. Obviously, the supply chain issues have just gotten dire. We keep hearing, oh, it's getting better, and then no, it's not. It's getting worse. And amidst all the inflationary pressures that continue to impact folks, increasingly, as I've been getting the TSD conference agenda ready for next month, so much that we're talking about is, the school bus driver shortage and what that means. And in fact, the morning that we were recording this podcast, I was on a call with our panel for special needs equipment procurement panel, and talking about, again, having to keep buses longer and equipment longer because the replacements just aren't there for one reason or another. In this case, the chassis. If you don't have the chassis, you're not going to get a bus built. So, some districts I've talked to, the really large ones, are maybe weathering this a little bit better because they have that economies of scale. But certainly when you're looking, Tony, at 2/3, give or take, of the country, probably has about, less than 100 buses. Some of them have maybe 5 or 10. What do they do? And keeping buses and equipment running for longer than they should is just not good. It's just not safe. Yes, we can put a Band-Aid on things, but at a certain point, a lot of the stuff might really, bite us back. And that has deadly consequences. So, NSTA showing some leadership here and trying to get the feds to sit up and do something about this issue.
I mean, mark my words, Ryan, the chassis shortage, it's just going to cause innovation, right? Ford and GM not delivering chassis to the manufacturers is going to cause more integrated chassis use, right? We saw a press release a few weeks ago from a newcomer, Pegasus Bus, where they have acquired 2,000 chassis from a company called Via, right? And I wasn't familiar with Via Motors, but when you look at it, it's like, oh, hey, EV chassis. They have Zeus, another EV chassis. You've got BYD, who's launching at the TSD conference their brand new integrated Type A. So I suspect we're going to see more EV integrated chassis from new players. So that may help alleviate some of the EV market tensions, but I'm not really sure what it's going to do for the diesel and gas industries. It's quite a predicament that they're in, because it really is causing a lot of heartache, and not to mention the supply chain issues is causing pricing to be so fluctuant. Manufacturers aren't even giving pricing, right? They're like, put your order in and we'll give you a price when we know. And that's hard for school districts to order buses in that manner. So very concerning issue. So we'll see how the market responds and adapts, but that is something I'm seeing in the background happening, is more and more new players entering the market, especially around EV, especially with the funding that's coming down the pipeline. And we're holding our breath for that EV funding from the EPA. So for the lottery, clean school bus. So that is coming soon, I'm sure. We've been told it's, I think this week or
Yeah, it's supposed to be.
towards the end of the month. It's got to be close. At the time of this recording, we didn't have it yet, but I'm thinking it's coming soon.
By the time you're listening to this, maybe we already have an article on stnonline.com. Who knows? Just stay tuned.
That's right. Well, before I head to my interview with Mr. Kayne Smith from Cypress-Fairbanks, we have a message from our friends at TransFinder. They want to make you sing, guys. They call it their quartet, 4 solutions that will keep your team singing from the same songbook to bring the music to your ears. That's Route Finder Plus, the lightning-fast browser-based routing solution that creates the safest, most efficient routes and bus stops. Stop Finder, the industry-leading parent app that shows where students are in real time. Their Wayfinder driver app that helps your drivers and substitutes. Also, Viewfinder, which allows authorized users to monitor the entire operation and make sure everything stays on time and on key. Their award-winning solutions work in harmony with each other to help cover all the district's needs. Email them at getplus@transfinder.com or give them a call at 800-373-3609. Tell them about the quartet, and you heard it here on the STN podcast. You'll be singing in no time. All right, coming up, Dr. Kayne Smith. All right, guys, super excited to bring our next guest on, Mr. Kayne Smith from Cypress-Fairbanks. He's the director of transportation out there doing some big things. I was just out at Cy-Fair, and for those that don't know where that's at, that's down in Houston. And Kayne is currently the reigning STN 2022 Transportation Director of the Year, but the new Director of the Year is about to get announced in November. He's had the mantle for almost 12 months now, so he's got to pass the baton to the next director, but he's done a lot. He's doing some cool stuff, so I want to bring him on and have him share a little. Kayne, welcome to the podcast, man.
Hey, it's great to be back. Thank you, Tony, for having me. And it was great to have you in town. We had a lot of fun, and I don't know if I got to pass the baton, but we definitely got to pass the football a couple of times.
Definitely. Kayne and his boys, Eli and Henry and I, we had the football scrimmage game. It was, I got to see how the Smith household does it down in Texas. We went to a football game too, went to the Texans-Chargers game where the Chargers were victorious. I know, we're in the middle of baseball season.
You had to bring that up.
Yeah, it's a little dig, right? And Kayne has been so generous to jump on the podcast while the Astros are playing the Mariners. So there's a lot of sports going on in Texas. There's a lot of excitement amongst your staff. Everybody's kind of getting pumped. The Texans got their first win too.
We did. We will, for 2 years in a row now, my only goal for the Texans have been don't be the first NFL team to go 0-17. And we've been able to accomplish that the first week of both seasons. We beat the Jaguars week 1 of last year, and then we tied the Colts first week this year. But we got our, 5-game winning streak going against the Jaguars now. So that got us our first win of the season. That was good. Got to go to the Red River Showdown in the Cotton Bowl in Dallas last week for our 49-0 victory over Oklahoma. That was and my apologies to anybody that may be an OU fan or a Jaguars fan listening to the podcast. As a Texas Longhorns fan, it's been tough for the past 10 years. And as a Texans fan, we just won't even go there. So been leaning on our Astros too the last couple of years. But it's an exciting time. Started the school year in the fall. You got football season starting at the same time. You get into playoffs in Major League Baseball. Hockey started a couple of days ago. Basketball's back. So it's an exciting time.
Excellent. So the school district, a lot happening. We got School Bus Safety Week coming up. What are you guys doing around that? You get your staff engaged, your community engaged. What's that look like down in Cy-Fair?
So we have 5 transportation centers, and each day, each transportation center does something different for their drivers. Whether it's one day they may be cooking nachos for everybody before their PM route. They may be providing snow cones, hot dogs, barbecuing, making hamburgers. Each day, each transportation does something for the drivers. We send out safety reminders on our tablets to all of our drivers every single day. We give them little goodies, little treats that'll be on the seat of the bus in the morning when they come into work. We reach out to the campuses, and each campus will do something for the drivers on one of the days during School Bus Safety Week. All of the marquees at the schools have signage that says, we appreciate our school bus drivers, look out for buses, providing safety reminders for the car riders and the passerbys at the schools. And then, of course, as a district, we send out a whole bunch of social media updates on our Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, that it's School Bus Safety Week. We appreciate our drivers. We try to not only focus on the safety aspect of School Bus Safety Week, of course, but we do a lot to just show the appreciation to our staff, our drivers, attendants, technicians, everybody who's coming in and having that important job of keeping our kids safe every single day.
Excellent. And I know your head of HR, Fernando, when we were down there, ran into him, was talking to him about recruiting, and you guys had a crop of candidates that had come in that were being onboarded, which is exciting. And what's the secret to kind of keeping the drivers engaged, keeping the pipeline full of potential candidates? Because I know you and I were talking, we have like older drivers that were retiring out. You're trying to like convince them, no, don't leave, stay, right? So it's this constant kind of churn of people coming and going. And, I know a lot of districts are always trying to be creative with their recruitment strategies and getting people in the door. What kind of do you do at Cy-Fair to kind of keep people coming and keep them excited and spread the word? Because snow cones and barbecues, that sounds pretty good.
Well, and I think the biggest thing for us is just having our staff have ownership in the department. They're part of the team, and we want to make sure that they feel like they're part of the team. I want their feedback. I want them to have a seat at the table. I want them to provide me their thoughts. They're the ones that are out there every single day doing the work. And one of the great things about last school year was that I was out there with them every single day. I haven't been able to get out there as much this year, but last year I had my own bus route. So I was with the drivers every single day, and I got to talk to them and really, get their feedback, get their feelings on how things are going. What's their biggest concern? What's their biggest, challenge or opportunity for growth in their position? So we try to allow everyone to have a seat at the table. And I feel like that having that ownership, and then of course, like we said, showing the appreciation to our staff is what's allowed us to have that 80% retention rate now for the past couple of years with our team. Now the challenge, even with an 80% retention rate, we're a very large department. So if we retain 80% of our staff, we're still hiring 250 to 300 people a year. So we have to be really creative on our recruiting. We go out now, we send recruiters out, and our recruiters are actually school bus drivers. It's not me, it's not Fernando, it's not our HR team. We have a school bus driver or a team of school bus drivers who, when they get off their route after the morning, they'll go to a local library, they'll go to a local YMCA, they'll go to a grocery store that, of course, prior permission, and we'll set up a table, we'll set up a booth, and our school bus drivers who just got off a route less than an hour ago will be able to greet people and talk to people about coming to work for Cy-Fair ISD as a school bus driver. I think that, I can go out there all day long and tell them how awesome it is, but I think it holds a little bit more weight when you hear someone who just got off a bus route a couple hours before telling them about what their job is, what their job looks like every single day. So we've expanded our recruiting to also include different community events that happen at the campuses. So we've let all of our campuses know if you have a PTO, a PTA meeting, or if you have some kind of community organized event at your campus, invite us to it. We'd love to have a school bus out there, a booth out there, so we can talk about school bus safety, but we can also recruit. We're also going to all the Meet the Teacher events. We're looking at putting advertising on our scoreboards. You saw our football stadium.
Cool stadium. Very big. I love football in Texas too. So that's a good place.
Hey, Friday night lights, you can't beat it. So we have the big scoreboard at our football stadium. And now even this year we have the, I don't know what you call it, the LEDs that go around the stands. SoFi has it. Not the big Oculus that SoFi has, obviously, but you know what I'm talking about. So we can run advertisements along the stands on those signs. So we're looking at actually putting advertisements in our stadiums as well. So we're trying to find every avenue possible to get the word out. The number one method, and we track all this data, the number one method is word of mouth. So by getting the recruiters out there, by spreading the information, spreading the word to our current drivers and all of our campuses that we're hiring bus drivers, that word of mouth is important. Number two, actually, is the advertisements on the sides of school buses. So we actually, as a department, we provide and buy advertisements that we put on the side of school buses that say now hiring school bus drivers or now hiring technicians. So we track that data to know where our best return for our investment can be. And that's what we focus on predominantly is the word of mouth, recruiters, and the size of school buses, the school bus advertisements.
Yeah, and I noticed on some of the older buses, they had like small little bumper stickers that were like, we're hiring drivers. But you said, hey, that's just like too small. It's not being noticed. So you put like full size billboards on the side of your buses, kind of more towards the rear, but they're much more colorful, 4-color graphics, a little brighter, a little bolder. And you said that you saw your calls increase dramatically when you kind of increased the size and the messaging. You adjusted the messaging a lot, correct?
Yeah, so we actually did a branding project a couple of years ago, and we actually created our own transportation department brand. And that's what you saw on those sides of those advertisements, the blue and yellow, kind of Chargers colors for you, Tony, that we put on the sides of buses now. So it pops. It stands out really well. So when we put that on the sides of school buses, when we have those banners out in along the fence line at one of our high schools or one of our campuses or facilities, it really pops. It really is recognizable. So it does draw that attention, and we can see and we can track that data. And one of our KPIs is our recruiting and where people hear from us. And that's been one of the more successful areas where we've been getting more applicants. And it shows with that new branding that we've done specifically for our department, that it's been recognized, it's been noticeable, and the community's really been seeing it.
Now, I know another really creative idea you and I had talked about, and you just touched on it briefly, which is the teachers, right? Mm-hmm. Going to people that already work for the district and saying, hey, do you want to pick up a morning route? Do you want to pick up an hour or an evening route? Like, how is that project going where you're actually engaging district employees to get some additional coverage? Has that been a good success?
It has been. We sent out an email to all of our campuses around November of last year, and we had about 70 staff members from campuses sign up within the first 24 hours. Now, unfortunately, not all of them had CDL, so there was a lot of training involved, and not all of them made it through the training process. But we were able to get about 25 individuals that came in and either drove or rode a bus as an attendant. So that has been greatly successful for us. We've, for really about 5 years now, have had what we call the job share program with child nutrition, where a employee will come drive a bus or ride a bus as an attendant in the morning, go work in the cafeteria at one of the campuses in the middle of the day, and then come drive a bus or ride a bus in the afternoon. So that's been successful as well. And we've expanded that to encompass our other ancillary departments, operations, maintenance, distribution, warehouse, those areas as well. So we've been able to get more people that are already employed. We can train them. And really, when you look at some of those other departments, a lot of them already have CDLs. So part of that training process gets a little easier. So by having those individuals, we can get them in the seats of buses faster. And it's a great opportunity for an employee who wants that 8 and in some cases 9-hour day guarantee every single day. So we've seen some success, and we'll continue to grow upon that and try to build upon that.
Excellent. So during my visit at Sci-Fair, Kate and I walked over to a friend's office, Mr. Bobby Williams, the head of fleet over there at Cypress-Fairbanks. And we were all joking because I came in and said, hey, Bobby, how's your maintenance staff? Are you like 40-1 ratio? And they all started laughing at me like, ha, Tony, 40-1. I wish, right? Like it's more like 100-1. So, Kate, how are you addressing the maintenance staff shortage, and how are you kind of attracting maintenance professionals or becoming more efficient with your processes?
So we are, honestly, with our vacancies, we're actually about 175-1 right now. We operate a fleet of 1,200 school buses and another 500, 600, 700, 8 white fleet vehicles. And we currently have 14 technicians on staff for all of that. And we have some helpers and techs service techs that assist in the shop. But when it comes to our true technicians, we only have 14. So yes, efficiency is paramount. We're a paperless shop. We have a system in place where our preventative maintenance schedule is set for all vehicles in Cypher ISD. We have foremen that help schedule all of the work that needs to be done by our technicians. We are very fortunate that we have a newer fleet where a lot of our vehicles still are under warranty. We buy the extended warranty on all of our vehicles to where if we cannot do the work in-house because of a technician shortage or whatever it may be, fortunately, a lot of those vehicles are still under warranty where we can get that assistance. We have worked with our local CTE department within the district, and we've actually had students that part of their work within the CTE program is to come and actually be employed in our department as a intern, if you will, and they'll go to school half the day in the morning, they'll come work for us in the afternoon, and they can help out in the shop. They'll shadow a technician, kind of learn the intricacies of the transportation shop, working on diesel, gasoline, propane engines. So those individuals, those students have helped out, and they've become a great recruiting tool for us as well, because once they hit 18, we can then hire them and they can become a full-time technician within our department. But what I try to share with our team and our HR team specifically is that we have to recognize that transportation within a school district is more comparable to a business than it is the education world. And where we can do salary comparisons for teachers in other school districts, for transportation, we have to look at the private sector, because the private sector is where we lose people. And it's hard to compete with the private sector today with technicians, with school bus drivers. So when we're doing these salary surveys to see where we fit with neighboring school districts, I have to say on the transportation side, we got to start calling the private sector. We got to start calling our local automotive dealers and see what they're paying their technicians. We may never be able to get to that level where we're paying a technician $50, $60, $70 an hour like the private sector can, but we can at least try to find a way to become a little bit more competitive and see where we stand in those areas. And we, again, recruit. When our recruiters go out, we make sure that they know, hey, we're recruiting for drivers, we're recruiting for technicians, we're recruiting for attendants. All those positions are vital to the success of our departments, and we need all of those.
Excellent. Yeah, and I know you have a secret weapon that you're about to unleash in Cypher called Transportation Center number 6. So Kayne has a lot of transportation centers. So if you're calling it number 6, that means you got 5 other ones, right? So we got number 6 being built. And I noticed something interesting about it, that there literally is air conditioning in the entire shop, which is very unusual. Was that by design?
That was by design. So fortunately, our 2019 school bond passed by the voters of our community. We were able to get transportation number 6 approved in that. And when we were going through the planning for that bond election, we basically assessed everything in the department. We knew that we were going to need a new transportation center. We knew we were going to need new buses. But beyond that, what could we do and what could be funded through this bond package? And any renovations and upkeep of a building and expansions of buildings can be done through a bond package. So I said, what if we added air conditioning to Transportation Center number 6 in the shop that can help with really 2 things. It can help with, obviously, the safety and comfort of the staff, because, Tony, you were here in October and it was a little warm. It was a little humid. Imagine what it's like in July in that shop. When it's 110 degrees outside with 100% humidity, you're looking at 120, 125 degree heat index. We got fans, you got flowing air through there, so it makes it a little bit manageable, but it's still hot. So the safety and health and well-being and comfort of our staff was important, but also just the safety and security of the building in general. When we think about accessing a facility, when you look at a transportation facility, we can lock down all of the doors that access the offices. But one of the areas that is easily accessible in a transportation facility is through the maintenance bays, through the shop, because we keep those doors open to provide that air circulation through there. So I was able to also say, to provide an additional safety and security to our facilities, let's air condition shop so we can close those doors and keep those doors closed during work hours. So fortunately, we were able to get that approved for transportation number 6 through the 2019 bond. And we will also be retrofitting our 5 existing transportation centers through various phases of that bond package to have air conditioning as well. So all 6 transportation centers will be air conditioned, I believe, by 2025 in Cypher.
Wow, I think everybody else should be worried because the techs are going to flood over to you. I think that might be it. Employee comfort. There's a lot to say about that work environment. Have to think that that's a very smart decision you're making.
Yeah, and that's, again, getting that feedback and talking to your technicians, talking to your staff. Hey, we got this opportunity. What do you want? What if you had a wish list? What is it? I can't make all your wishes and dreams come true, but I can sure try. And that was one of those that, really, you ask a couple of them, you don't have to ask anymore. It gets hot in the summer. You know that when we do our safety audits, one of the easiest ways to get in could be the shop. So let's find a comfort level. Let's find an additional security and safety level that we can provide to our facilities. So that, honestly, to the bond committee, and then fortunately to the community of Cypher ISD, that was a pretty seamless sell for them.
Excellent. Well, great update from Kayne. Dr. Smith, thank you so much for coming on the podcast, being a guest. It's been a bit since we've had you, so great to see you and hear from you. And thanks for sharing about all the good ideas to recruit drivers, mechanics, some of the progressive thoughts you've had on staffing and advertising. I think everybody's looking for ways to do it a little different and trying to solve that problem that everybody's dealing with, which is that recruitment thing. So glad you guys are doing it well.
It's always a pleasure. Thank you for having me. And my boys say hello, Tony. They had a blast with you. They did pull me aside later and say, we had so much fun with Tony, but Daddy, you're still the better quarterback. So I was at least appreciative of that.
Oh, that's a cut. That's a cut.
We can maybe test those skills out again, at TSD in a couple of weeks if you want.
Yeah, TSD is coming up November 8th through the 13th. We definitely will have a football toss. We got the tailgate celebration there on 11/10. So we'll be having a lot of fun. So really looking forward to you there. We'll have some barbecue for you. So some a Texas feast of different chicken and brisket and beans and all the good stuff that you get down in Texas. So looking forward to that. That's down in Frisco, Texas, guys. So if you haven't checked it out, online registration is closed, but you can come on site and register. You go to tsdconference.com. You can check that out. So, Kayne, thanks so much. Look forward to seeing you and the Cypher team in a few weeks there in Frisco.
Yes, sir. Looking forward to it. Thanks again for having me.
A special thanks to Dr. Smith, Mr. Ryan Gray, my co-host. Really great conversations today. A special shout out to our sponsors, TransFinder and First Student, for being this episode sponsor. Visit stnonline.com for everything happening in the school transportation industry. We got the latest news stories. Check out that October issue as well. We got our rising stars in there if you haven't read it. Awesome article about some incredible people doing big things in the industry. Guys, remember, you can find this podcast on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, wherever you listen to pods. Be safe out there. School Bus Safety Week. We love you, nation. We'll see you next week.